Have you ever had a bad Manhattan? The iconic cocktail is surprisingly easy to mess up.
How do you know this?
I drink and I know things.
Happy hour. I'm Dave, the basement bartender. The Manhattan is so enigmatic because it's so simple. I'm gonna give you 5 tips, plus my favorite recipe, to make sure you make a perfect Manhattan every time. So how about you boop the like button and let's get this thing started. The Manhattan was created in New York City's Manhattan Club around 1880. And while it's been the catalyst of several variations that have become icons on their own, it's one of the few cocktails that has pretty much stayed the same since it was created.
The whole time you would, the whole time!
So let's break down what makes this cocktail great, so we can avoid the things that make it not. First, quality of ingredients. The Manhattan is for the most part a 3-ingredient cocktail. Whiskey, vermouth, and bitters. There is no place to hide in this drink. So make sure you're using a whiskey you like. Traditionally, rye is used. I personally like something that's got spice, but not a lot of bite. George Dickel rye is a great choice. It's got a higher rye build at 95%, and it's bottled at 90 proof, so it's very sippable neat. And at around $25 a bottle, it ain't gonna break the bank.
You really should have thought of that before you became peasants.
In my book, the freshness of the vermouth is the biggest troublemaker. A lot of people have a bottle of vermouth sitting on their liquor shelf that only gets used every once in a while. Don't use that vermouth. Vermouth isn't a distilled spirit. It's a fermented wine that's been fortified with a spirit. And fermented products just don't have the shelf life of distilled products. Once opened, vermouth will only last about a month in the refrigerator. If you don't use it frequently, try and buy 375 milliliter bottles rather than a 750. Tip number 2, use the correct whiskey to vermouth ratio. There isn't much debate on this one. 2 parts whiskey, 1 part vermouth, a few dashes of bitters. Don't get tripped up by my lack of specificity on the bitters. While bitters are crucial to the mix of a good Manhattan, and I tend to use multiple bitters. More on that in a bit. The key ratio is the whiskey to vermouth. I've had Manhattans that someone insisted were better because they used less vermouth, leaving the drink dull and one note. Never good descriptors. What I suspect they wanted was less sweetness, bringing me to tip number 3, the right balance. So like most cocktails, the Manhattan consists of a base spirit, whiskey, an acid, vermouth, and a sweetener, also vermouth. I'm the first person to admit, I will put less sugar in my drinks than others might. But less vermouth is not the answer when asking how to make a Manhattan less sweet. Rather, substitute your vermouth for a less sweet vermouth. Remember what I told you about vermouth earlier? Vermouth is a fortified wine. And just like wine, if you've had 1 bottle of vermouth, you've had 1 bottle of vermouth. Each brand, hell, each batch can vary drastically compared to another. And don't forget, whereas sweet vermouth has more than 10% sugar content, dry vermouth typically has less than 4%. So maybe combine the two. Spoiler alert, a perfect Manhattan combines the two. 4th tip deals with adding additional flavors. This to me requires a big ol' warning bell. Look, a flavored Manhattan can be a wonderful thing. I've even made a video about a maple and bacon fat washed Manhattan, and it's great. You should totally check out that video. But your flavor additions have to be subtle. Generally, I like to use bitters as my flavoring agent. I'm sure you all know the rules about using multiple bitters.
There are no rules.
Use a dash of one, maybe 2 of another. Create a bitters blend that delivers the flavor profile you're after. All right, let's make the perfect Manhattan. Combine a 1/2 ounce of sweet vermouth, a 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth, 2 ounces of rye whiskey, 2 dashes of aromatic bitters, and 1 dash of peach bitters. Stir over ice for 30 revolutions and strain. Now, final tip that makes or breaks Manhattan is how it's served. Up, meaning in a stemmed glass with no ice, or on the rocks in a rocks glass. Look, both are completely acceptable choices. The question is, do you want this drink to evolve? If it's mixed the way you like it, serve it neat and up. The drink won't be affected by the temperature of your hands, it won't dilute any further, it's perfect, it's done. If, however, you like the subtle changes coming from the warmth of your hand touching the glass, how the ice melts slowly to open up the whiskey and provide new aromas, serve it over a large block of ice in a rocks glass. The choice is yours, but know your choice and communicate that to the person making your drink. Because the quickest way to have a bad Manhattan is to have a Manhattan that doesn't match your expectation. Garnish with a cherry. Cheers. The subtle note of peach from the bitters helps elevate the sweetness, which I've cut down on by combining the sweet and dry vermouth. This little trick gives the drink the same brightness as using a full ounce of sweet vermouth, but it won't have the heavy, syrupy mouthfeel associated with that ingredient. Hopefully these little tips will help ensure that you never have a bad Manhattan again, because it really is one of the best cocktails out there. If you could, take a few seconds to boop the like button, and if you like my content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Please, 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 please. Please drink responsibly. We'll see you next time.